Hello Indie Warriors, good to be with you once again, Old Gamer Joe, with some quick gameplay impressions as we're looking at looter shooter Nightmare Reaper, which has been in early access on Steam since all the way back in 2019, now ready for its full release. This is yet another retro throwback first-person shooter with some roguelite elements. Nightmare Reaper quite literally just drops you into the action. You begin in a tutorial, this dark world, you have no idea why you're there, who you're playing as, or anything like that, but eventually you will slowly unravel more of this story, at least based on the 2 hours that I've played. You'll come to find that you are locked up in an asylum of sorts, or a hospital area. There's one memo in the middle of the room, it's a little bit cryptic, but you'll actually unlock more of these memos which slowly piece things together, at least maybe they do, I hope so. Anyways, but they're very cryptic, and that's actually a really cool way to tell a story. You go to bed in this asylum, in your bed, and then you wake up in the nightmare scenarios where you're having to blast your way through hellish demons. Another cool aspect to this is as you are transported back, whether you succeed or fail in these levels, the room gets a little bit more messed up from time to time. The lights might go out, or there might be some drawing on the wall that wasn't there before. It almost reminded me of Silent Hill 4: The Room, a critically underrated game in my opinion, just for its spooky factor. I always really loved that game just because of the apartment you found yourself trapped in, and stranger things continued to happen. That's what I was reminded of here. Before I get into the gameplay, I want to mention that there's a lot of different settings in this game. Anti-aliasing can be cranked up, shadows, textures, the amount of fog, the V-Sync option is there of course, how much bloom you want. Pretty full-featured. On a 2070 Super, I was able to run the game at most of the max settings with no issues at all. I was getting over 100 frames per second the majority of the time. No surprises in terms of how this game plays, really. You have a kick for a melee attack. You can interact with different treasure boxes where you'll get a lot of different loot in this game. You can cycle between different weapons. There's a ton of weapons, and really, that's where the fun of this one is, in all of the unique weapons that you come across that are a blast to use. It's also where I killed myself a lot with my own weapons, but still, you get everything from books that can cast fire spells or staffs that shoot poison at enemies. There's chainsaw drills, there's all kinds of cool stuff. Really fun to mess around with all these different weapons. And then there is some platforming from time to time. There's plenty of pits with spikes that you'll want to try to avoid, jumping from pillar to pillar. Actually, as far as first-person shooters go, the platforming feels pretty good in this one. For those of you that enjoy playing games with a controller, you'll be happy to know that the controller support was in full effect here, so there was no need to mess around with any sort of settings in Steam. It worked right out of the gate, which was really cool. Obviously, you have the keyboard controls as well, and everything can be changed around to your liking. I personally didn't like the location of the jump. I messed with that a little bit, but some of you might be just fine with how it is. As for the actual shooting mechanics, they feel really great in this game. I know I mentioned that it's fun to experiment with the different weapons, but it all feels fantastic regardless of which weapon you're using, whether you're hurling Molotov cocktails at your enemies from a distance and trying to take out a swarm of them, or blasting them at close range with a shotgun. Everything feels really smooth. Another interesting element to this game is that sometimes it felt randomly generated, and I don't know if it was just me, but other times it felt like I was doing the same level again. When you die, it's very easy just to go back to your bed and repeat the level, but yeah, it's kind of strange. It's almost a mix of random generation and then just normal pre-built levels. Just like a lot of other roguelites, you're expected to fail, and you will die quite a bit. It's easy enough to hop right back into your bed and get back into the action without a problem. Punishment isn't too steep here though. You're able to hold on to the majority of your gold, and then you get a fun Mario 3 style overworld map for a skill tree here, where you travel to different levels to unlock new skills by playing a 2D side-scrolling platformer section. What a fun way to level up. I credit the developer a lot here. So your main goal is going to be to get to the end point on each map so that you can warp out of there and progress further into the game, but there's plenty of incentive to go off the beaten path, fill out the whole map. There's a pretty good built-in map here, and find treasures, that kind of thing, all while blasting through all the different enemies, collecting a bunch of coins so that you get stronger. Alright, here was the most annoying part of my time with this game so far. Again, it was only about 2.5 hours or so that I've played, but the shotgun enemy. Gosh, he feels a little bit on the cheap side. I hated dealing with these enemies. They do huge damage and they just seem to hit you no matter where you are. That kind of sucked. Other enemies were mostly fine to deal with. Not a fan of the shotgun guy in this. All of that said, I am a big fan of Nightmare Reaper so far. I truly did feel the addiction, saying to myself, I'll get it this time, one more run at that level, and before I knew it, I was doing 10 more runs at that level. I absolutely love the 90s visuals here. They look great, a throwback to games like Quake, Duke Nukem. There were some bouncy pads that I came across even. Wonderful art style to this one. It looks fantastic. It runs very smooth, as I mentioned. Sounds great too for the most part. I will say the music is a little bit sparse at times though. It's metal licks that creep up from time to time. Pretty good stuff when it is there, but there is a lot of silence in this game as well. When the action intensifies a bit, you'll get more of the music, but there are moments of silence that felt maybe a little bit drab. Overall, highly recommended here. A lot of great content too, so for those of you that didn't play this in early access, looks like you can expect 3 chapters here. All those chapters are broken up into a lot of different levels though, so fear not. I wasn't even close to done with chapter 1 yet, so a lot of content, some great gunplay and platforming, and an overall addictive loop. Keep this one on your radar and perhaps consider picking it up if you're thirsty for a new first-person shooter with some roguelite elements. One thing I think we'll all agree on, really cool way to tell a story. Thank you so much for watching the latest video from I Dream of Indie. We would now like to shout to the heavens for our brave indie warriors and legends that help us to keep the lights on here at I Dream of Indie. Thank you to indie warriors Bill T, Christian Cruz, Kevalo, Adriana Amato, CJR, Julian Kolbus, Jesse, CPM, Ray Lynn, Marky Mint, Dave Hart, Peekaboo, Lex Noyle, PSC, Carmine Red, King of the Hatch and Blue, Francis 14, our legends Jen Rose, Larkison, Mitchell Hall, Eric Peach, Skepticism, C Coil, Nathan Moore, and Chris Jackson. Thank you for everything that you do for independent developers, for the publishers, and for I Dream of Indie. Everybody else, head down to that description box below. There's a lot of ways that you can help us defeat this gaming echo chamber and bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming.